Hello everyone and welcome to State of the Game number 156. It is the 22nd of April and we again doing the home edition of this whole thing. There's a lot of important stuff to talk about today with TU9 coming out. Some things not going as they should. We're going to delve right into that and I'm going to get through the stuff that we need to talk about real quick so we can get into the things we know that everyone wants to talk about, us included. It's going to be important to talk about. All right, I'm going to bring in Chris and Bruce nice and quickly just to say hello. Let's see if... Oh, guys, can you hear me?
Yes, hello.
Hear you loud and clear.
Fantastic. I mentioned it in the intro before. It's Chris and Bruce's birthday today, both of them. Not twins. You guys do look kind of similar.
Yes.
No? All right. Sure. But like I said before, I want to get through this stuff really quickly so we can get to the whole M1A stuff, which is going to be very, very important to talk about. TU9 was released yesterday. The patch notes are available on the forums. Mods, if you can put something in chat, a link to those, that'd be great. There are some known issues. If you had Striker knee pads, you would have seen that they were replaced by a level 1 item. Sorry about that. That was fixed last night in an emergency maintenance. There are some existing known issues still. The UI issue related to damage to health on assault rifles is inaccurate on Stadia. Every other platform is okay. Kenley College Technology Laboratory being blocked. We know about that. The Coney Island progression blockers. We're looking into those as well. Firefly skill not launching or sticking to the agent's hand. Turret skills not placing properly and immediately going on cooldown. Some SHD levels not showing in the group UI properly. Shield skills and assault rifles not working together properly all the time. Not being able to start or finish the Angel of Mercy contaminated area as well. We know about all of those. So those are in our known issues lists.
I also want to say that these are the priority ones, right? Like, so we know about other ones, and you guys are sending over videos and screenshots. That's really helpful. But these are the ones that are high priority for us, especially on the progression blockers. We know that they affect the manhunt as well for Coney Island, for example. Yeah. And there's also a bounty for the manhunt that is that we didn't mention here now. But these are the ones that we are tracking at high priority. There's also a forum thread that we are updating regularly that will cover those and give you an update. But those are the ones that are on the top list for now.
Yeah. The reason I blow through those things quickly is not because they're at all unimportant, but we know that a lot of the people who come to these streams are talking about specific things. I want to know. I want to get down to the details on it as well. I'm an M1A user for good reason because that thing was crazy powerful. I know, Chris, you are talking to people as we speak about what's going on with that situation as well. So you might be getting some messages throughout the stream as well, correct? All right, cool.
Yes.
So I think it's better if Chris and Bruce, our birthday boys, get to the bottom of what happened. Can I pass over to you, Chris? Or Bruce, out of it?
Yeah, I mean, I can start off with our side, right? So, I'm part of the team that does the communication. So, the community team does the patch notes and all that stuff. And we made the mistake that we didn't include the M1A NERF. The reason for that doesn't really matter. We just didn't do it. I do want to point out that it wasn't on purpose. It doesn't make sense for us, as you said in the intro, to try to hide such a nerf for one of the most popular weapons. Like, nobody believes that we would get away with that. That's not the case. Again, the exact details on why we dropped the ball there doesn't really matter. We're going to improve some of the processes internally to not make that mistake again. But then we also, of course, saw the general reaction to the nerf itself, the amount of the nerf, and then, of course, we have Bruce on, and I'll segue over to Bruce now, who said something else. So there's obviously also confusion that we added by just us talking on State of the Game. So I think Bruce can talk about the balance aspect on that, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, we should probably just go or start with, like, how did we arrive here, right? Yeah. I think that's worth addressing. For the sake of transparency and being honest and owning up to our mistakes. So at some point months ago in 2019, the M1A was buffed. I think it was around TU 6 or 7. But as we all know, the meta at the time was
Eagle Bearer.
Profusely Eagle Bearer and Berserk clutch builds and assault rifles, right? Like, because that was the meta and that's what anyone was using. There was a bigger beast on the prowl, and it was Eagle Bear, and it overshadowed everything else. Unfortunately, ironically, we're once again in that kind of a situation. Mm-hmm. So the M1A issue was already there. It was overtuned to begin with, and it transferred into Warlords of New York and became the new meta because we retired Eagle Bear, or we changed it significantly to match the new meta.
Yeah.
Then, a pandemic occurred, and work from home happened, and the team is working in isolation, and we're doing our best to maintain a live game while also producing new content that's coming, soon and in the future, including a raid, right? But a big part of our job, of course, is maintaining game health. And a designer on the team, the M1A, we've known it's been an issue for, weeks, as long as anyone else has. We're not blind to that. Made an adjustment that was meant to be a first step to test and then validate and make sure and see, like, okay, is this where we see it? Unfortunately, that never happened because, again, we're working under somewhat extraordinary circumstances, and things tend to fall through the cracks, and we make human errors. That's just a fact. This situation, I've said this before and I'll say it again. This is not a result of bad intention. It's a result of bad process. And as Chris said, that's something that we're going to continue to work on and address while working under these conditions. Now, I'm not trying to sugarcoat or apologize or lay blame at anyone's feet in particular. And for all intents and purposes, this is something that, in a way, everyone is ultimately responsible for. Like I said, it's a trophic cascade. It's a cascade effect. It's a comedy of errors that leads to an unfortunate event. We never intended for the M1A to receive this significant of a nerf. We always intended to address the M1A, but in order to make deadlines and meet mandates, we had to shelf work on the M1A balance. And the intention was to then revisit it post TU9, while also looking holistically at all of the weapons and all of the talents and gear sets and named items as well, in order to make a more profound and holistic balance pass. But, unfortunately, we jumped the gun. No pun intended.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone at Massive would say that it's good what happened. I think we really agree with agree with the community for sure that this is bad. Like it's the
optics on this.
There's no way to put
terrible.
it nicely. Yeah, 100%.
And it was compounded by us addressing some other outliers like the Holy Trinity. So it's not fun. We know it's not fun to log in and then see your build look the way it did.
Totally, it's super demotivating.
And to also have your striker knee pads turn into awkward knee pads.
Not cool.
That's never fun either. So we on behalf of myself and everyone on the team, like we apologize for this. And this isn't something that we intend to do or continue doing. So I think we can hopefully though move on and
I think
because there's still.
I think everyone can agree, like I was saying before, the community and us included, that this isn't good enough. What happens next, right?
I agree.
Where to from here? I mentioned, Chris, that you're talking to some of the team right now about how we address this particular issue. Bruce, you alluded to some things about more holistic balance coming up, but let's talk about M1A specifically. What are the next steps?
Yeah, do you want to talk about the balance part, and then I talk about when that's happening?
Well, unfortunately, I can't give any sort of concrete information in terms of like dates or when we're going to make
exactly
make a final pass on the M1A. But what I can say is that unless things have changed, do you want to go ahead and
Sure. Yeah.
Let's just say what's going to happen
Yes.
within the next immediate future.
Yeah. So obviously this was a big discussion today in the office as well. We had chats open, calls open, and all that stuff. So what we're going to do as a first step is we are going to revert the nerf of the M1A and the Baker's Dozen in PvE. So in PvE, it will return to the old way it was before the TU9 patch yesterday. For PvP, we will still do an adjustment. That is going to be 20% nerf for the weapon, because we also have seen the reaction in the PvP community, which was that they welcomed that this weapon was nerfed. Do you want to add anything to that, Bruce?
In regards to the PvP balance?
Just in general to that change in general.
Well, I mean, if all we do is revert the change, then will, for all intents and purposes, be throwing the PvP balance or community under the bus again. And we don't want to do that. Mm-hmm. And we're well aware that the M1A is an issue in PvP, and we want to at least address that while we can. So we're going to, I believe, we're reducing its damage by another 20% in PvP only, while maintaining its damage as it existed in TU 8.6 or prior to TU9 in PvE.
Yeah. So in terms of timing, we are obviously looking into what we can do as soon as possible. So it might be this week. It's a target for this week. It might be next week. We'll keep you up to date, obviously, on maintenance timings. We also know that we have run a lot of maintenances in the last couple of weeks, so we don't want to overdo it. That being said, as Hamish ran through the list of known issues, we also have other things that we want to fix with a high priority. So if we have, the skill to put those fixes in together with that change, we'll do it. I want to point out that when that change goes in, we might also see another UI issue for Stadia users. So if you're playing on Stadia, you might see that still as the TU9 values, and that will just need a client update. So it will be a little bit longer, but again, the reversal of the nerf is planned for this week. And again, for the complete picture, in PvP, there will still be a nerf, but it will be only 20%.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of questions in chat. Like people, myself included, seem to be happy with at least the immediate addressing of the M1A stuff. It does bring up a lot of questions. What about other guns? We'll talk about some other things coming up, but Bruce, we alluded to the fact that this is just an immediate thing. What's the intention going forward for future updates as it pertains to balancing, I guess?
Yeah, so long term, we're going to address the M1A. Mm-hmm. I think the simplest way to sort of wrap your head around this is that if you look at every other weapon in the game as doing 100% of what it should be doing in relation to our metrics for time to kill, NPC health, armor, talent modifiers, attribute multipliers, all of those things, right? Mm-hmm. So if everything else is, for all intents and purposes, tuned accurately, but the M1A is tuned at 120% of what it should be, we can't simply go and just raise everything else to match that, because we would essentially be making the game more than 20% easier. It's a complex system, mm-hmm. and there are many knock-on effects. So the M1A will be addressed.
Okay.
Other guns that are underperforming, exotics that are underperforming, named items that are underperforming, gear sets in particular, we have a plan. We will be buffing things, but the thing is that it's much, for better or for worse, it is easier to make adjustments to outliers than it is to take a step back and look at the broad picture or the big picture.
Sure.
And buff things. That it needs to be done holistically.
I know you're not the designer behind it, but would that then not lead to a discussion about, I know there's a big conversation in the community right now about NPC difficulty and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Is it easier to make the global changes that way? Or not easier, but more elegant?
We've done as many of the, let's say, easy fixes for that in terms of decreasing NPC health and armor values, how much damage they do. There were a bunch of tweaks and adjustments in TU9 specifically for certain archetypes or NPC outliers. Now we're getting into nitty-gritty, more nuanced aspects of NPC and AI behavior where...
And I just want to state that that's not your purview in terms of game.
No, that's not my realm of expertise.
Yeah.
I, like everyone else have opinions. And
Same.
there are definitely certain things that are, pain points or outliers in terms of the NPCs and what they do and how they behave and how they interact with each other that are still not necessarily ideal. That being said, it's in the greater dialogue surrounding challenge or difficulty. That's an ongoing debate. And there are lots of opinions. I personally like a challenging game. Others want something perhaps a little bit more casual friendly, but it's give and take. And we're trying to appeal both to players who want a more casual experience or want to feel like there's some element of gear progression where I get cool gear, I feel much stronger. But also, we'd be kidding ourselves if we said our game is only about loot and gear. It's not. It's a shooter, right? There's an element of player skill and mastery that we also need to be conscious of. So simply making gear ultra powerful and letting you run amok is going to ruin the experience for a quite significant part of our player demographic that likes a challenge and wants to be get sweaty and test themselves against really challenging content. So it's a balancing act, and we're going to continue to work at it in order to try to make everyone as happy as possible. But keep in mind, like we have a raid coming out. There's another
I was just
raid
bring that up. Yeah, I think
coming out, right?
Yeah,
There needs to be a high water mark. There needs to be a summit to climb, right? So we need to be conscious of that.
Of that specifically, I just want to say, because I've seen questions about this already in chat and all that last week as well, and we didn't say anything. So on the raid date, nothing has changed. It's still planned to be in the calendar of spring. So if you Google Northern Hemisphere spring, you'll see a date range, and that's where we are still planning to do this. Nothing has changed in terms of how we approach this. The raid is still planned to be free for everybody who owns the Division 2. But as Bruce says, like the balance that we're doing now and that is, planned to come for not only the M1A, but other items will affect the rate. So we also are very, very aware that whatever we're doing now also affects that summit, right? So the holistic approach is really, really important, not only for the current game, but also what's coming afterwards.
Yeah.
Cool.
And then let's just quickly talk about, like, okay, we said like we want to do this and that, and we want to have a more holistic approach. What does it mean in terms of timeline, right? So again, as Bruce said, I think 2 weeks ago, like we're looking at things after TU9. So TU9 is now here. We do want, we're currently working on things, and we do want to do more work on balance, and that includes other things as well. Like I know that Nikki is looking at containers and all that purple loot stuff and all that stuff, but that's not something that we can do within like weeks, right? So it's not a quick fix. It's not something that we can do just like putting some code lines in there. So the current target date, and I say target date very pronounced because that's might be changing, is June. So in June we're looking at a larger balance pass for not only difficulty but also loot and all that stuff. Again, some things might shift. Some, for example, we might have some balance things going in and some other not going in, but we'll keep you up to date on that. But just to give you a rough time frame, is what we're currently targeting.
Yep, cool. I did have one other thing I wanted to bring up. I got a little bit bored of rifles, so I made a skill build.
Yeah.
Ooh, the send-off. That's Dunzo. What happened?
So the send off, the optics on this aren't great. Again, but as we all know, in TU8 or Warlords of New York, we removed holstered talents from the game. We didn't want to support them, and we wanted to go in a new direction. Rooted was a holstered talent. The send off, the named version, had a perfectly, or had the named version of that talent, and it unfortunately could be, we redesigned the send off to have a huge range increase, to sort of play with the fantasy of the Keltec of that shotgun. One of its cool factors is that you can load it with buckshot or slugs, at the same time. So we're like, hey, what if this shotgun has really crazy range? That's fun. That's cool. And that's what we chose to replace Rooted with. Now, unfortunately, there was a way to craft the send off and have it roll with perfectly Rooted. That was never intended. So we had to fix it. It was a bug,
Okay.
Now, I know that this sort of dovetails or becomes part of a larger conversation about the inadequacy of skill builds, or what are we going to do to make skill builds feel better? I agree. They're a little bit underrepresented right now, and they don't have as many gear set options or talent options or weapon talent options. We're addressing that. For the next title update, we actually have some pretty cool gear that's brand new talents, and most of it is actually geared towards, not necessarily just skill builds per se, but hybrid skill builds where you can be a little bit of weapon and a little bit of skill and actually have that feel viable, while also having options to just commit even further to your skill build and have it pay off in some way. So we're aware that there's a sentiment that skill builds, or let's say single target sustained DPS skill builds or burst AoE skill builds aren't performing as well as they should, and we can address that, and we will address it.
Yep. Cool. All right. Good to know. It's it did feel like that one thing that made skill builds like close to viable, and now like
yeah,
you said,
but at the same time, it's like, as Matt said earlier, the fact that it was essentially like a secret, right? With that specific named weapon and the crafting and whatnot, sort of should have. Again, I'm not making excuses, but it was never intended to work that way or to be available as an option.
All right. And obviously in upcoming weeks, we'll be talking more about what the next title update and how that balancing will look. And I'd love for us to kind of be super transparent about how that is all going down and what we're doing and what we want to switch around and what that looks like. And we'll push to make sure that the transparency on that is a whole lot better than was with TU9.
Yeah, absolutely. But before we go on that, I just do want to say, like, again, we're sitting here in Discord. That also means that if we want to be more transparent, we want to be better. That doesn't necessarily mean that every week we will have all the details. And I just want to manage expectations there, because we just have to wait until some things are also done and approved and all that stuff. So keep that in mind. Again, we will try our hardest to be as transparent on these changes as possible and as soon as possible, but we are all still at home, so
that's
keep
cool.
that in mind.
I know these streams are kind of difficult for everyone. Maybe I'm a masochist, but like for me, these are not, I wouldn't say the most fun streams, but I think they're the most meaningful streams to do. Like, it's really easy to do a stream when it's about, I don't know, showing off cool new shiny shit, but I don't know, coming here and talking with the community and being as transparent as possible. I just want to thank you two over there for showing up, because it's not easy, but it's mega important, because I don't know. I know people come and chat and they're like, let's get the popcorn and that sort of thing. But I hope that we want to make sure that we do better. So we're here and we will continue doing these things. We always have. and we will until, I don't know, Doomsday. I don't know, the Rapture. Like, I don't know. Okay, moving on. So, on that topic, I mean, it's a big topic. Is there anything else you guys want to address? I mean, if there are any more questions that you see in chat, feel free to stop and let us know.
So I know that Johan and Chris, you guys had prepared some sort of like hot topic community questions. We've addressed some of them already. I don't know if you want to go through that. I'm happy to answer what I can.
Yeah, I think it makes sense because we gathered them, and I think there's a couple of good answers in there, especially also on the philosophy behind exotics and best in slot and stuff like that. I think that's one of those where I really love to hear what you wanted to say, because your explanation, I think, is really good to explain what we think is best in slot and how exotics fit in that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we can also probably take a moment to talk about True Patriot and why we are why it was adjusted. But on the topic of exotics, so I'm trying to find the question or the exact right. So if I believe there was a wording issue in the email, but if exotics are not meant to be best in slot items, why do some still feel so unimpactful even after the changes? Well, the thing here is that exotics are meant to actually feel like potentially best in slot items. They just require you to engage with the exotic talent. And if you can make a build around that, then that weapon in particular, at least mathematically, is best in slot or at doing what it's meant to do. It's a little bit more nuanced, obviously, because not every exotic is about doing damage, right? And there's some more niche roles. And there are absolutely some underperforming exotics that aren't up to snuff and should be better. And the last time I was on State of the Game, we talked about this, and TU9 had, let's say, some of what we planned to do or how we want to address exotics in the near future. And we absolutely do intend on buffing some. Because they're not quite where we want them to be. There's no, that's no secret. But there's sort of like, I guess there is a misunderstanding or some confusion about what exotics are supposed to be in 2020 or post Warlords of New York, and they're absolutely meant to be powerful, sought after, lusted after weapons that you want to both collect but ideally make builds around, and we'll continue to work on them until they start to feel like that.
I think what Nikki said might have been misunderstood, because and I'm like paraphrasing here because I don't want to speak for him necessarily, but like I've seen a lot of people saying like, oh, but if they're not best in slot, why are they so rare, for example? And best in slot, like in this connection, is not you pick it up, and if it's God rolled, you immediately equip it, no matter what build you have, no matter what you've done before. You just pick it up and equip it. That's not the intent, right?
We're not. We are doing everything in our power to avoid repeating the same mistakes we did with the Eagle Bear. We do not want everyone running around with the same gun. I say that while meanwhile everyone's running around with the same gun. That's not our intention. It's just a bit unfortunate. And like I said at the beginning of this State of the Game, the M1A, this nerf and now rollback, it's not a result of poor intention or bad intention. Please try to give us the benefit of the doubt, and believe us when we say we do have a plan, and we have a pretty good idea of what we want the game to be, and how we want it to play, and how you guys want us to make it play as well. Like we're listening, and we're working hard at that.
Yeah. Okay,
cool. I think the second one that you also brought up is like the True Patriot. Before we move on, I think that's it's a good topic because it's on the topic of PvP versus PvE nerfs and how we balance those.
Yeah. So I've seen a lot of conversation around the True Patriot nerf, and that it stemmed from us attempting to address PvP imbalance and then therefore compromising, the PvE aspect of it. That's not the case at all. The True Patriot heal or repair is just overtuned. It was mathematically, once again, depending on how you built, if you stacked the incoming repairs and you were really, taking advantage of that gear set, it was far and above more effective at healing than even a dedicated healing build could be. And that was never the intention. True Patriot it's the Bard. It's meant to make the enemy worse and make you a little bit better, right? It's a force multiplier effect. It was never meant to be both the tankiest gear set and most survivable through sheer sustainability, right? And that was never intended. But there were also some unfortunate bugs with the gear set where the white debuff repair wasn't applying to teammates. That's been addressed. So now the gear set is working as it should. It's working in terms of numbers numerically as it was intended. And it's still quite powerful. Like if you want, you can still stack the incoming repairs and have a heck of a lot of armor and self-sustain. It's still an option. It's just not far and away above anything else that was achievable in terms of healing or self-sustained by other means.
Okay. Cool. If you're just tuning into the stream now, we have talked a lot about some of the balancing and particularly focused on the M1A, the things that happened on yesterday when the update came out for TU9. Chris, can you just remind people of what they can expect in the coming short timeline as is going to happen with that?
Yeah, so that's why I'm looking down. So if chat is wondering why I'm looking down, so I'm looking at my laptop here. I unfortunately don't have a final date for this yet, but what we're going to do is we're going to unnerf the M1A and the biggest dozen. So the nerf will be reverted for PvE. So there will be the same damage as it was before TU9. For PvP, we will do an adjustment of minus 20%. So it will be half of the nerf that we've seen with TU9. That means in PvP, and again, we think it's the right choice because PvP players were quite happy with the nerf to do that. So there's two different values basically for PvE and PvP. The plan is to roll this out this week. Exact timings to be done. Again, we have a couple of other high priority issues that we want to get fixed as well, and we don't want to spam you with maintenances again, even if we have to. So I will give you an update on when that's happening, but it's hopefully this week.
Okay, cool. We're running late, but that's okay because it's very, very important that we talk about these things. I do actually, I always try and look for the glass half full things when shit hits the fan. I was watching Macho's stream a bit earlier, and obviously in the void that was, left open by the M1A nerf, there have been some pretty creative builds popping up. I know Macho was running a pretty bonkers pistol build today, so there are other things out there, and if people are either bored of the M1A or looking for other things, there are some other things out there. So just want to shout out Macho, go over to his YouTube channel.
There absolutely are. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're sorry, eh?
Sorry, eh?
So sorry.
There are absolutely viable builds outside the M1A, but I get it, or we get it. It's difficult to want to use other things when the M1A is just so powerful and so efficient. And when the game, at the end of the day, is about clearing content as quickly and efficiently as you can, then it makes perfect sense why you would continue to run the M1A. But I watch streams of, and I play the game myself, and I watch people of all skill levels play, and I'm always impressed because there's variety out there, and while it might not necessarily be the most optimal or optimum way to play the game, it's refreshing to see that there is variety and viability out there outside the M1A.
Yeah, I mean, I was actually starting to put together a Diamondback build today when I saw the reduced damage from my M1A. I was like, okay, maybe there's something there. But yeah. Anyway, we've talked about that a lot.
Yeah, I think one thing that I've seen in chat as well, and we had it in the community questions too, and we talked about this extensively in the past, so I think it makes sense to just talk about it right now as well, is on the three pieces, like the Hollow Man's Mask, the Fox's Prayer, and all that stuff. They receive different kind of nerfs and changes. Maybe you can talk about that as well, Bruce, just on that intention.
Absolutely. Again, it's never fun to nerf things, but something to keep in mind, and I hope this helps sort of helps you guys see things from our point of view. Those attributes in particular, damage to health, damage to armor, and damage to targets out of cover, like those are I just saw Hamish's cat briefly.
No, she's she's about to walk over the laptop that you guys are on Discord, so we'll see what happens.
Don't turn us off, kitty. Those are multiplier effects. They're a lot more powerful than your standard attribute like crit chance or headshot damage. And they were, once again, overtuned. They were a lot higher than they should have been. And while, yes, arguably they're somewhat niche, you're not always shooting a target with just a health bar or an armor bar or someone who's out of cover. Those items were just so far and above the best in slot that under all circumstances, you put them on, you fire and forget, and you're good to go. Again, the game is at its best when there are options and there isn't just one way to play the game. And we don't want you to feel absolutely 100% obligated to run a rifle or LMG build simply because Fox's Prayer has an enormous multiplier attribute on it, while also giving 10% more damage to your rifles, and the contractor gloves are an additional 10% to LMGs on top of doing a bunch of damage to armor targets, right? Which is most of the enemies that you shoot. So hopefully this sort of helps balance things a little bit more. We know it sucks to have your damage output be hit, but in the long run, this is going to be better for the integrity of the game and its game health.
Yeah. Okay. I do have to move on. There are some other things we need to talk about. This is going to be an ongoing discussion for sure. Like Chris mentioned, the M1A changes to the changes will be coming very, very soon. So I guess Twitter is always a great place to make sure that you're up to date on that. There is also, if you haven't noticed, a free trial available. I just wanted to mention that. You can play for 8 hours. You can get up to level 8. There's no DZ or PvP in the free trial. Clan functionality is not happening. The store functionality is disabled as well. But if you do decide to buy the game after that, the character progression will carry over.
We also put this in because I know that a lot of people, play this game here, obviously, when you're watching State of the Game. But if you have friends that want to try it out, this is now completely available, right? Like this going to be no limitations, no free weekend or something like this. You can try it out. A friend can try it out. It's on all platforms except Stadia. So even if you have, if you want to play it on console for a little bit to see how that feels, so if you want to play on PC and see how that feels, you can do it now.
Yep. My camera just went blurry for a second. I had to fix the thing. I know there's people in chat saying, "Oh, don't buy this game." Well, you can do the free trial and make the decision yourself. I do want to just quickly show this image because you may have already noticed now if you've logged into the game that you have a new backpack trophy. It's a bit of a celebration to say thanks for coming back for a new patch, even though we know that there's some things that need to be addressed and there's some apparel caches that will have shown up for you as well. And if you log in before May 5th, those will be yours. Okay. The other stuff, obviously, the season is a new target as well. I wanted to quickly go through that as well. I'm just going to bring up the example that I have here. So if you've logged into the game, you'll know that there is a new target. So you can track down Saturn now. It's worth also reminding people that if you didn't manage to complete the first or second ones, those are still available. Like it's not, you don't have to have already finished those before you move on to tracking down Saturn, but you can go and do that now. We did mention earlier
in any constellation. Like if you want to do one first over the other, that's totally fine.
Yeah, we did also mention earlier that we do have a known issue about the Coney Island stuff, and we know that that's a portion of this whole manhunt thing. So we'll keep you updated on that as well. The Urban Jungle Apparel event has finished, but if there are bits that you still want, those are available on the store as well. There's another league starting next week, which will have activities in New York, which is pretty cool. Chris, is there anything else we need to say about this portion of the season?
Again, I just want to remind everybody, like, especially for the league, we've seen some people saying like, oh, this heroic mission was super difficult, and then it balanced over to the other talks about, what is difficulty level and what Bruce said in terms of like, you like a challenge, you not like a challenge, and all that stuff. And then I just want to remind people, for the leagues itself, you have 2 weeks to complete them. So you can do 30 and 30, 1 week 30 and then other week 30, and you still get the maximum rewards. So there's no need to, as some people said, like throw yourself against the wall if you don't want to. That's going to be the same case for the home league. So that's all cool, I think.
Yep. Spooky is saying, you do realize the manhunt cannot be completed with the Coney Island bug, right? We just mentioned that. We do know there's an issue with the Coney Island portion. So that needs to be fixed quick, smart. We would agree with that. I know we've had some pretty serious discussions about stuff, and a lot of people aren't here for the other parts, the agent highlights and the agent photos, but I think they're important to do because people still keep making really cool stuff. So I want to head over and take a look at our first one.
I also want to say on the agent highlights, like, we do these also because